Shalom, friends! Welcome to Orange Socks, a podcast celebrating Jewish creativity. I'm your host, Yitzchok Moully, inviting you to join me in exploring the soul of Jewish expression. Shalom, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Orange Socks podcast. And I have the distinct pleasure of having with me Hendel Futerfas. Hendel, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Moully. What do you go by, do people call you Moully or
I go by Moully. Yes, I go by
okay.
Moully. That totally works.
Well, thank you, Moully.
Yeah.
Um,
So, Hendel, you are in Melbourne, Australia.
yes,
And for those who know, I grew up in Melbourne, Australia. But
it's true.
I have not,
Your art is all over here, that's for sure.
uh, but I'm not. I'm not. I haven't been back. I just had a son who was in YG in the yeshiva over there, and he just turned 19. And the last time I was there, he was 2. So I have
Oh,
not been
wow.
back in 17 years. So tell me, how's Melbourne?
I will bet that it's a very different place to when you were here
Yeah,
17 years ago, but
yeah,
it's great. It's a great place. It's even changed like literally from the 6 years that I've been here.
right.
Um, like I saw the sort of evolvement and development of this place. So it's very cool. It's cool to see it
Yeah,
like growing and bettering, and
right.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
I officially enjoy being here. What can I say?
Officially on the record, on the record. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, I say the Melbourne that I left no longer exists. So
probably
yeah,
not.
it is time to come visit. That's for sure.
I will say you'll probably like when you come, you'll definitely say, "Oh wow, nothing's changed." But it's more of like a nuanced feeling. Like when you're in the community, it's
Right.
you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, no, you see
it takes
evolution. You
time. It
see,
takes time to get into it and see like what. Yeah, it's different. It's different when you're just living here for a while. But anyway,
yeah, no, for sure, for sure.
um,
So you're doing something that I actually never thought I could do, is be an artist in Melbourne, Australia. And I just kept thinking that the pond is too small over there. But you're proving my earlier assumptions wrong. So that's a good thing.
well, hopefully, I'm still not sure. The jury's still out,
The
but
jury's still out.
it's look, I always said like you don't need 100 million people to sell art to, you know,
Right,
a couple thousand is enough.
right.
So, Melbourne, Australia certainly has that,
Right.
smaller quantities, but very, very livable,
That's awesome.
if you do what the people want. But
Right.
yeah, but there's all like it's 2024. Like we can
Yeah.
sell to America, we could sell
Yeah.
to Europe.
Yeah.
Like we're not just limited to Australia.
You threw in a
Um,
line over there. What people want.
yeah, well, there's always that intersection between what you want and what people want.
Right.
Especially when you're trying to make a living off it.
Yes. Yes, sir.
I feel like there's a happy medium there. Uh, yeah, something like that.
Fair enough. No, absolutely. It has to come from your heart. I mean, listen, there's no have tos, that's for sure. That's the first thing. But
It has to come
you
from
know,
your heart, but it also has to go to their hearts, right?
right, right, yeah, yeah.
So there's a
And
line. I mean,
there is a line, and also, like, I don't know if the spiritual component of art or the Judaic component of art, but this idea that it really is a conversation. Art is a conversation between the creator and the viewer. The creator, like, so there has to be a dialogue. That if there's no other, if it's so out there that there's no other to even have a dialogue with, then you definitely haven't sold out, but you know you haven't engaged with anyone. So
definitely. You're bringing up an interesting point that I've always thought of when you're trying to bridge like Judaica art with the larger world. Um, and there's no dialogue, like what you just said. Like, so you have a lot of really powerful, inspirational ideas that are just, larger than life. But if the recipients aren't there to kind of understand anything you're saying, there's, so I've definitely struggled with that on how to bridge that gap and how to bring things, not in a way where like you're sort of watering things down or simplifying too much, but there's definitely room for like more, um, just closing that gap of like deeply religious ideas or chassidic, obviously not like religious in the biblical sense, but like chassidic ideas and finding a way to like connect with the larger world, because
Right.
ultimately we're not just trying to um spread our ideas to just Jews. I mean that's
Right.
great.
No,
That's
for
also
sure.
great. But like we want it to be to the larger world. So yeah, there's a lot to still figure out there.
Yeah. No, you definitely you want to be accessible, make it accessible. At the same time, you want to be true to whatever, values, ideas, or truths that the art is attempting to communicate. One thing I heard recently on a podcast that I thought was quite fascinating is that anything, and it was this conversation I think was being said about yoga, but like anything that is for the masses by
Hmm.
definition is discoverable, and therefore it's consumerist. It's created for the consumer, and therefore automatically there's a certain level of truth to it that's taken away. Because the true version is too hard for the average consumer. So I mean, say Tanya, and the idea of to be a Bainani, to be a Bainani according to Tanya is sure it says Kikar Velecha, and that's but it requires so much. It's a life's mission, it's a life's work. So when we teach Tanya, let's say, we don't
Yeah,
start off with this is where we begin. It's not that's what you strive for. You begin here, and then you build up. And that's so there is the consumerist, like I want my work to be accessible. I want my work to be seen. I want my work to be engaged with. I don't want my work to be so highbrow or spiritual brow that it's unattainable or understandable without a PhD in Judaism. So yeah, so it the
definitely. I think you definitely, thinking about that now, I think you definitely pull that off pretty well. Making the on-ramp accessible. But yeah, there's lots of different levels, There's level
right,
one up to
yeah,
100. So we don't need to go past any, particular depth if that's just, where you want to be. But
yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
Um
So tell me about how'd you get into this thing? Tell you your early memories as a creative, or the first time you recall. When did you wake up one morning, decided you wanted to be an artist? This was in your blood? What's your early creative memories?
I I think I actually did wake up one morning and decide I wanted to be an artist. I think well, first my namesake, my great great uncle Hendel Lieberman, who was a Futerfas.
Right, right,
Um, so he, from a young age, I always kind of liked the idea, the connection, the namesake, but I didn't actually have
So,
any.
so just I mean, to clarify, you were born after he passed away.
Yeah, yes, of course. He
Was that,
died in the
yeah, okay,
70s.
okay, okay,
I think the mid to early 70s.
okay,
Yeah, I was born quite a bit later, but
okay,
yeah, I mean, like, look, my family always had loads of his art all over the walls,
right,
grandparents, my parents. So I grew up with seeing his work, and then obviously shared the name. I, as a kid, like was not. I was like into the idea of wanting to be good at artwork, but I wasn't actually.
right,
Like I always had the kids in my class who were naturally gifted, who can just like draw from their mind, and I always looked at them and was just like, oh gosh, how do you do that? And
right,
it didn't go past that. It was kind of like,
right,
okay, cool. Like I tried every
right.
now and again. It didn't really get me anywhere.
Are
But
there
then
any other are there any other kids called named Hendel after him? Are there any other Hendel Futterfasses out there?
there Hendel Futerfas? I don't believe so. The
Okay,
families all have one. like all the cousins. There's like
Right.
one in each family. Believe it or not, there's one great nephew. My sister just had a boy
Ah,
who named after Handel.
right.
Um, but nobody with the name Futerfas, I don't believe. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. But I also only have one of his, like he was Chanoich Handel, and I only got
Right.
Handel, which
Okay.
was for other grandparents that shared the name at the time. But anyway,
Right.
one day I kind of like woke up and I was like, I kind of want to be, I don't know. I just had this thing I wanted to be like him, even though, and again, it had nothing to do with like my passion for art. It was more like just trying to
Right.
be like this guy anyway. And I
Right.
started copying his drawings. Um,
Ah, okay.
and I remember like the first one I copied to the best of my ability, and my parents were actually very encouraging, and they were like, "Oh wow, that's so great." It probably wasn't very great, but maybe for my age or whatever, it
Right.
just spurred me on. It just got me like copying another and another and another, and like I just, and obviously, with practice, things just kept getting steadily better.
Right. Right.
Enough to just like finally want to take classes. Like I took classes with Michal Muchnik. I want to say I was like 9 or 10. I don't remember. Maybe a little older. And then and that was that. Like it just got me. It just started creating this narrative in my head that like I can do this, and like
Right.
enough like steady improvement is just what it takes to just carry on carrying on. And
Right. Right.
then I
So this
got
is like
it was my
what
yeah.
ages? What ages? Like when did you first start, and when did you get lessons, and when did you go to Mahal?
So
Like how
I was
young were you?
probably I want to say I was probably around 9-ish. I think McCall's lessons would have been around 10, 11.
Oh wow. So
Um,
that's
it
beautiful.
was
That's
late.
really young.
Yeah, it wasn't really young because
I
people
started
talk
at
about like, oh, I've been drawing since I was 4, I was 3, I'm always had a
I
pencil in my hand. Like I never felt that. I've always felt very
I
like,
started I started at 22. So 26. I started at
okay, well,
26.
that's not young. That's not young at
Yeah,
all.
that's not young at all.
Um, But anyway, so then I did lessons with him. I think when I was 13 or 14 was when bought my first oil set. I was in Svas, Mesivta, Sir Shluchim, and I remember going to the art store. I was really excited, and then I just started messing around with oil paint. Um,
Nice.
and
So
yeah, I mean, it was all garbage, but it was
you were
just,
messing around. You were exploring.
yes,
That's
I was exploring completely, and whatever it was always just enough to say, hey, I couldn't do that yesterday. Let me see what I can do tomorrow. And
yeah,
like it was just it was the mindset was everything. Like and I think that applies to lots of things in life.
yeah.
It's
That's
really just
awesome.
a mindset. It's not so much the actual um product, if that makes sense.
How did the yeshiva respond, react to you painting?
Interesting question. I'm trying to think, 'cause I was thinking about this lately, like I've done some other sort of articles or interviews about like Judaism and conflict, and I never really found I never really found that the conflict kind of resonated with me because I never really had such a conflicting journey with art in terms of
Right,
Judaism. Maybe
right.
because I just wasn't so explorative in that area, or maybe I didn't ask too many questions, or I don't know. But I
Or
do remember
maybe
this.
you just had a supporting family. I mean, that's really
I
unfortunate.
I so I definitely did. I definitely had a very supporting family, but that's not necessarily where conflict starts and ends. Like
Yeah,
life goes
sure,
outside the family. We
sure,
have
sure.
like the yeshiva, especially at that age. Like you have your yeshiva, you have your rabbis. So I definitely remember there were issues in Svas where I was doing these pastel drawings, and I think I worked really hard on this like Spider-Man drawing. And it got confiscated. And I remember it was really upsetting at the time.
Right.
And rightfully so. I mean, like, I don't know if it was a comment to me about like not doing art. It was more like, don't draw Spider-Man in yeshiva
Yeah,
type
yeah.
comment,
It's
which
for
was
the
fair. I was still upset
right.
about it. And I just always remember like it was, yeah, it was like put in a drawer, and I was like, why didn't it get thrown out? Why is it being saved? Like, what? Anyway. So
Right.
so that was like a conflict with the yeshiva with my doing art, but I never really had anything like am trying to remember. I slowly wherever I went, I kept going to the art shop in that city. I moved around in a lot of different yeshivas, so I was in a lot of different places, but um I never had an issue. Like it was just
Other
me, my
than
paints, no one bothered me.
that's good. That's good. Other than the art shop, did you get to museums or galleries? Were you aware that that was something to do to go see what's out there?
Um well in Svas I was in Svas, so I definitely did a lot of like artist quarters.
Right.
Other times in yeshiva I couldn't. I don't think I
Right.
mean I was 15, 16, so I couldn't get out to museums at that point. Um I was familiar with going to museums with my parents, grandparents, throughout my childhood.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah, I wasn't sort of studying, so seriously at the time. Later, I can't remember how old I was. I want to say maybe 16, 17.
Was there?
Sorry.
No, go
No,
ahead. Go
I
ahead.
was about 16, 17, and I started taking more serious lessons with Michal Bloom, a
Okay.
fantastic
Yes.
artist
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
in Crown
Yes. Yes.
Heights.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
he that's where I first started learning to see. Like he started teaching me to like I don't really remember. I mean, I love Michal. I was very young, so I don't really remember too much what I was doing. We were definitely learning
Right.
certain techniques of like how to use a pencil, how to use an eraser. Like it was real like beginner stuff. But Michal started teaching me how to see, and we our lessons would basically the whole lesson was sort of a critique. Like he would give me an assignment, he would give me a painting and say, copy this painting to the best of your ability. And then I would go home, do the work, come back, and then we would talk about for like hours, like 3 hours, all the different like the similarities between my work and the differences and how
Wow.
I can make it better. And so it was really just learning how to see. And in terms of classical work, it's pretty much all it is. It's learning how to visualize and how to understand what you see, what you're perceiving. The physical movement of a pencil, that comes with a bit of practice, but the main the main development is like what are your eyes compute, what are you computing? What are you seeing?
Right. Right.
So that was very beneficial. I mean, I had more I could talk about my later training, but that's when I like really started taking it seriously,
That's so awesome.
I
That's.
think.
I wish I had that experience. I mean, I'm happy for you that that at a relatively such a young age, yeah, you're like really taught to think and to see and to analyze like that. That art isn't just putting out something pretty or visually accurate, but like really learning to see. That's I love that.
Well, art can be anything, but this was just specific to, I don't
No,
know,
but
just training a
it was
specific
it was
skill.
a rigorous training. It was the training, not as you said, not just to use a pencil or a brush, but the art of learning to see is powerful. Was
Yeah.
there a point that like was there any a specific point like did you think that that you would be a professional artist, that art would be your profession?
I don't know. It was a steady. I go back to the same thing. It was just like a steady improvement, one upon the next. Like from there, like I took very baby steps. Like there was one slight leap I made later, but the next step after Michal, I went to the Art Student League. I think it was around
Mm,
2021, maybe 22. Yeah, I went to the league and I was doing I was just taking all like classical lessons and still life lessons and some abstract. Like I was just taking whatever I can take. It was fascinating. It was a long commute, but I really
yeah,
liked it.
yeah,
There was the only like the bar to entry was a waiting list, so you had like anyone can
right.
get in, but like certain classes were really um
Full, right. You have to wait. Yeah,
full and sought after. So like you couldn't get in until someone stopped taking that class and there was like a waiting list and then you'd get in. So that was great. And then and then I was working a little. I mean, I was doing a lot of different jobs, but I was working at one point, and I was like 22, 23, and I was like thinking about. I had this job opportunity, and I was considering it. I might have had to move away, and I was like, you know what? Let me try. I had gone to Turo, so I had made up for my lack of high school diploma and degrees, and I had done like one of those fast track GEDs. I think I got like an associated in the liberal arts or whatever. It was the equivalent of what you needed to get into college.
Right.
And I applied to FIT. It was a long shot, and I got accepted. And then once I got accepted to FIT, the Fashion Institute, I declined the job, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go to school for 4 years.
Dive right
Actually,
in.
it wasn't even 4 years. They had like a double. They have a just two-stage degree. They do. It's like they officially split it up into 2 and 2 years. So like I was like, all right, I'll do it for 2 years, see how it goes, and then obviously I finished. But um, just one thing kept going to the next, and I just
Right.
kept,
Right.
kept going.
So what
Um,
what about it drew you in? Why?
gosh, what drew me in? Well, the pursuit of anything, the betterment of anything is exciting. It's something that you have a passion for. It was different to most people I knew. Um, it's just, it could just be a narrative, you know. I was just listening to something I can't remember. There's a podcast on the placebo effect, and I think it was talking about like narrative, like things like we tell ourselves, stories we construct. So I don't
Right.
know. It could just be a story, a narrative you slowly tell yourself that this is what you want to do, this is what you have to
Right.
do, this is I
Right.
don't know. Maybe there's something deeper, maybe not. But
Was there a subject matter or a general direction to your work, or was at that time it's more driven by learning new techniques and new skills and it's just amassing knowledge rather than
I think so. 'Cause I remember my essay getting into school, and I was like talking about like I laugh at like I don't know, like you think back to the things you said when you were younger, like what on earth was
yeah,
I talking about? But
right,
this is one idea I was saying about like I'm not looking, because I was saying like I'm not looking to do hyperrealism. Maybe it's because
right.
I didn't feel I could, so I was bashing it and saying like God has already done a perfect enough job in this world,
Hmm.
and I don't need to do hyperrealism. My work is blah blah blah, and I was just like,
Right.
I mean, I got in, but I don't know if I was like, school was for me was definitely all about, well, everything was new. Like nothing, as much as I had been doing it for a while, like all the different classes and all the different techniques and all different styles, it was like a complete explosion in my brain of like new things.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
definitely, for the first few years, I definitely, there were painting classes where you do the assignment, but then any other class that's like abstract classes or like sculpture classes, we would do assignments, and I would never like carry on to the like one assignment to the next. I would always like start a new project, and I would just make these like little notes of like, okay, this is we'll explore this later, and then let's try something new. Okay,
Okay.
let's explore that
Right.
later. It was definitely about like trying to do as many um different, like using different tools and just different concepts, and especially like when you're in that environment, when you're in that space, your brain is just like it's all you do. You're so much more creative. Like I miss
Yes.
school
Yes.
for that environment. Yeah, like it's just a muscle. Creativity is a muscle. Like it's not something. I don't think it's something we lose. I don't think it's something like it's if you do it, if you use it, it'll come. If you don't use it, it fades away. Like it's just
Right.
that's all
Right.
it is. So yeah, your question was, did I have like a certain path or like a specific interest?
Being Jewish, being a chassid, how much of that came through in your art? How much of it was, there's different levels of identity and so on, but like, is it just, oh, like the fact that you're a man, the fact that you're a white male, is probably, it's just, it is who you are, but it may not play into deeply what your work is about because it's just, of course, I'm a white man. So being Jewish and being a chassid and having, did any of those play in deeply? Was like you felt that it was something that you needed to do because that was expected of you, or you're just at this point you're just playing and exploring and allowing the mediums in the process to dictate where you're going.
It's a good question. I think some of my literal work was definitely, came from what I know, what I've seen, what I was, so I did like a lot of the abstract work had like Hebrew letters in it and some words. I was doing some pictures of Farbrengens, of that sort of thing. Excuse me. And then a lot of my abstract work was more just about like exploring with prompts, like things we were given to consider, based on gallery visits, museum visits, and form, color, space. So I don't know if it was necessarily tied at that time to my Jewish identity. But someone once asked me a couple of years ago, like a similar question about like how to develop your art or your ideas. And I told him what I think about, which is developing like an identity as an artist and a style. I mean, it can happen in a few different ways, but like for me, I've always been very into just like working on yourself as a person, right? So if your work is not necessarily clear on what it is, like you have a practice, you like to doodle lines in any particular manner, and it doesn't look Jewish, but my theory and my feelings is that it is, if you're Jewish, the work is Jewish, and like if you do it enough, and if your life is about Judaism, if you like to learn Chasidus, if you like to learn Torah, if you like to, if a big focus of your life is Judaism, your work will be innately Jewish. Now, do you know that like right now? Maybe, maybe not. But I think it was Manet or whatever he said about his like artwork. Like he was talking about like the meanings of paintings, and he was like, oh, like the meaning. I forget what Manet, my father, or Monet. I don't know. I think it was Manet. He said like, oh, the meanings of paintings, like we assign those later. Like we paint, and
Right.
then the title, well, we name it later. So that's kind of how it is. Now, it doesn't mean the name wasn't there before. It's just that you don't have to think about that right now. Like just I'm very into like self-development. And if you're, I mean, we should all trying to be bettering ourselves. And if you're in that like path of bettering yourself as a Jew, like your work will be Jewish, whatever it
Right.
is.
Right.
So people ask me about like sculpture work. Is it Jewish? So yes, some like my Aleph sculptures are obviously innately visually Jewish, but then I have other work that doesn't look Jewish, but I still feel it's Jewish because I'm Jewish and I made it, so it's Jewish.
Right. Right. Right.
You
That
know?
alone. Right. It doesn't have to have an overt Judaic meaning. Yeah, no, there's no
Yeah.
have tos. I mean, we we said that earlier.
Yeah.
And I mean, relative to music, the classic thing that we get told in yeshiva is that you should only listen to Jewish music because Jewish music is an expression of the soul, and therefore listening to Jewish, when you listen to music, you're connecting your soul to the soul of the person who created the music. And if it's Jewish music,
Yes.
you're connecting your soul to a fellow Jewish soul, which is good for your soul. And otherwise, for non-Jewish music, you're connecting yourself to other sources. But like everything else, what is Jewish music is really the definition of that is just something that was created with a Jewish soul. So
Exactly.
I would
But
like to
a lot of
believe.
that, yeah.
No, just to finish the thought, I'd like to believe the same thing is with art. What is Jewish art? I mean, I hate that question, but I like the better question is this Jewish art? But the simple answer is, if it was created with a Jewish soul by a Jewish soul, then by definition, it's Jewish art, whether or not it has an overt visual, whether or
Symbolism.
not, yeah, yeah,
I think a lot of that stuff, what you just said about music also is it depends like if you're tapped into that frequency. Like if you're the more refined you get in life, the more you'll come into, experiencing whether something is like good or bad for you on those on a music level, because
right,
like you
right,
need to. I mean, that's just my own thought. I don't know if that's actually true, but I wanted to I wanted to say I was listening to your conversation with Rabbi Yossi Paltiel, and I actually thought that that was so fascinating. He definitely answered a lot of questions that I've had, that I was thinking about. And yeah, I thought that was a great that was a great talk. He
Good.
was just
Yeah.
like the that's the point. That's the point of why you do this.
Yeah.
But he was taught like just the one point he made about it was music, about how like music is permissible today. And I had learnt a little while ago about like the Gemara talks about how music is just like not allowed. It's
Right.
prohibited.
Right.
And there's no exemption for it other than I think probably like for a mitzvah. But and like usually like when like the art scroll will talk about a halacha, it'll in the footnotes it'll give you the modern opinion and like, you know, but this is how we hold today. But there was nothing. There was like
Right.
actually zero um sort of caveat like actually, but today
Right.
we are allowed to listen to music. And I was just like, so how
We're
come we
really
can
not.
listen to like we're yes, we're actually
And yet,
not
right.
allowed to. But then sort of he explained really well about like how well, I guess it came from Chasidus, like the Rebbeim, and it's a matter of life and death. I just thought that it is very nuanced. It's not, I don't know if it's like a, this is the
Sure.
answer, but it was kind of have to listen, you have to listen to the podcast, but it was very good. It was, I really
Good.
appreciated it.
That's it's good to
Um,
know. Yeah, I'm getting some feedback, about the podcast, and yeah, yeah, from fellow Jewish creatives who are getting little nuggets and little ideas. We're all spread out. You're all the way in Australia, and there are some Jewish art groups, and there are WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups and whatever groups, but you
sure.
know we're not at the stages, the cafes in Paris kind of thing, where artists are getting together and sitting around and talking and sharing and discussing. And so yeah, this is what I created. This very selfishly, I created this podcast, so that
That's great.
I can have these conversations with fellow creatives. And yeah, let's record it, let's put a camera out there, and hopefully someone will
Absolutely.
get something good out of it. Absolutely. And we need each other. We need
No, it's
to
true.
bound,
You get,
you know,
your inspiration comes from these conversations as an artist. Like, you don't get much from thinking in your head all day. Conversation creates just for other thoughts, other movement, and that yeah, that's an important tool, I guess. That's what I had in school, but you don't get to be in school for the rest of your life. So yeah, you definitely need to create the
right.
space for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward to your art today. What themes are you exploring? What are you creating? Um,
So I do okay, so it's more it's like fast forward, we have to go back a bit, but
God.
I've done
So
no,
what'd you
so
do
in
after? Well, why not
school.
after FIT? I
So
mean, what was the next step?
FIT, I was doing a lot of different things. So I was still doing portraits, and then for a while I never wanted to do the Rebbe's portrait because I just felt I was too intimidated to, you know, just like the reverence of for the subject. And then I got over that at some point, and I was just like, you know, just stop it, just you know, I obviously wanted my ability to get to a certain point, but even when I thought it was, I knew it wasn't, but I kind of was just like, you have to just do it. You have to do it, otherwise you'll
Right.
never do it. Um,
Why did you have to do it?
I just I
Is it
found
is it a rite of passage? I mean, so many people have painted or created the Nevis portrait, but you did it. You had to for yourself. You had to for society at large. Why did you have to?
I
If I
thought it was no, that's it's a good point. I did it. I think there's something about the meditative experience when you're painting a subject, you're fully engrossed in that image and that subject. So for me, when you're painting the Rebbe, it's just it's a certain place you go, um, and for lack of like better explanation. Yeah, it's sort of it's a deep form of meditation. If you're going to meditate about a concept or a state of being, you have to sit, close your eyes, and
Right.
just really try to get there. Painting
Right.
is a little bit of a hack. Like you get to because there's a lot of visual, so which is obviously like a much more powerful um, experience. But you're sitting there in front of a picture, in front of a canvas, and you're really just zoned in to the Rebbe. And when you're painting the Rebbe, like I always try to listen to Nigunim, and you're trying to get into a space, like you're not just painting like someone's grandmother, which is fine to all the grandmothers, but you're yeah, it was a selfish just form of me like allowing myself or having the ability to put myself in this sort of special state.
Yeah.
I think that's why I don't know. I let myself just be okay with, you know, creating it, even if I didn't feel like my skill level was necessarily at the point of what I felt was like a respectable rendition.
Right.
But anyway, that's just,
No,
there's lots of different points. So, you're not always like thinking of everything at the exact same time, like we have this thought, we have that thought, and then it happened, and I create them now, and I'm not sad about it. I don't regret it.
no, it's a beautiful thing. I just it's not
And
pushing
then for
back
that
against
point,
it.
I
Just
don't do them all the time. I don't do them all the
right.
time because sometimes I'm just not in the space.
Right. Right.
And yeah, it's something you need to. So
Yeah.
I was doing some other abstract work. I was doing, I guess, the Hebrew letters. I had this idea of like tefillos sort of ascending on high. It's like we daven and then like our prayers go up. And it was just like a thought about like, what does that mean? Our prayers go up. So it was just like a silly like grounding of that idea of like, oh, I'll paint these like sort of whimsical letters and words that kind of look um at the time, I think when I created them, I tried to connect with like what that word made me feel in terms of which colors or which palette I'd go with. But I don't know how accurate that was, or what. And also, once you go, like work with a certain range of color, it needs to work. It needs to be cohesive. It needs to be so
Right.
you kind of go down. You choose a path, and then you sort of stick with it. Um, so I was doing a lot of that. I think I was calling it word energy paintings. Um, at the same time, I was doing my sculpture. In school, I did my thesis on wood sculpture, and I kind of like got into this path of wood kerfing. It's like where you like make little slits in wood and you bend the wood. I didn't reinvent that. I just used it as a tool for whatever I wanted to do.
Right.
Um, and then I later developed that after school with a friend. I was in Korea for a while, and we were like very hardcore, like just working on this project. Nothing ever came of that, but the work I did there, I think it was like 6 weeks, was really, really, it really fast tracked like what one would do in a couple years of exploration. Like it really
Right.
it really pushed the work to like a level of like that I felt like, okay, I could take this to a gallery, or it wasn't, but in my head it was. So that, again, it's all about the story that we tell
Yeah.
ourselves, and
Yeah.
that narrative that allows us to keep moving further. So just, yeah, I keep coming back to the theme of like it's important to have a story, because through that story, you have the ability to carry on um, an original intention, which gets caught up and blocked with reality. Like you have an idea and you're like, this is what I want to do, but then life happens. You're like, I can't do that anymore. It's very
Mhm.
important to have that story to be able to like um, reaffirm, or like re-begin, or to keep moving that original goal. So I was doing those sculptures, and then I did. Eventually, they started becoming a bit more grounded. Um, and then later here in Australia, I kept doing it. I got approached by a gallery, and then we sort of workshopped some stuff. And then From that, once I was working with wood, kind of like I brought the wood back to the word energy paintings, and then I started carving letters. Um, and the letters was actually an interesting thing because the concept of the letters was like the Hebrew letters and Hebrew words have more of a life to them than a typical language. Like a typical language is associative. Like the letter A doesn't mean anything unless it's part of Apple, right? It doesn't have
Sure.
any
Right.
intrinsic value. But
Yeah.
like an Aleph has, like God created the world through the letters. So there's this concept of creation that's intrinsic in the Hebrew language. So the idea of the
And in the
of
Hebrew
the
and in the alphabet themselves, just the individual
yes,
letters
in the individual
without
letters, there's
without
life in them.
context. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Love. Yes.
So the idea was to sculpt them in a way that gives them this sort of sensual corporeal form, like you're looking at them and you see like, oh, that looks humanesque, that looks like a muscular, so that's where that came from. But I kind of was like that was like the life of the soul of the project, but like the physicality of the project that allowed me to do it was because I was already working with wood and I was already carving, so like I kind of um just sort of bridge that.
Yeah.
So there's always a lot of that, like lots of playing with different mediums and then just mixing things up and then seeing like what happens if you do that and that material, and you just we're always playing,
Yeah,
and
no, and it goes both ways. Sometimes there's a concept, and then is okay. What medium do I use to communicate that?
yeah,
Which
for
is
sure.
kind of my way of doing things. But then there's working with a medium so much that it evolves into something else that you hadn't seen originally, but through the medium itself, you come to something that, you know, again does have deep meaning, evolves, in a whole different direction than you had started before. So yeah, getting deep into which I haven't done. I got so many ideas and some are all over the place, and it's finished as soon as I
I
finish
know.
something. Lately I've been, even though I don't think I'm capable of it, but lately I've been like yearning for doing something enough time, like really living in a particular medium or in a particular something. I don't know, but I know I'm all over the place. It's not happening
Listen,
anytime
there's
soon.
something to being all over the
Um,
place. Like you're attacking lots of different concepts. One day, when you're grown up, you can look back at some of the ideas and say, you know what, I wanna like just explore that a little bit more.
uh,
I think it's great to
yeah.
just keep searching, keep changing it up, keeping being different. I don't know. There's
No,
no right way
there is no
of
right
any.
way. No, there is no right way. No, I love it. No,
Yeah.
I'm just like i- relative to the way, I suppose I used to look at it and seeing like someone who does oil portraits and like that's all they do. They
Yeah.
do oil portraits. And my thought was like that would drive me mad. I couldn't handle, to handle that for a week, a month, but that's it. I couldn't do. But someone who, when you really live it, then you know, on the outside, it's just, oh, the oil portraits. They're all the same, and they're all similar enough. But when you're really in it, then you start creating nuance and difference, and the subtleties, start showing themselves in a different way than if you just, you do a series, and then you move on to something else. So I think maybe I'm growing up a little bit, starting to see
Yeah. But I remember you telling me
value
that you
in.
wanted to take like go back to drawing and doing just working on. Have you gotten around to that? Have you gotten around to like
I've had a whole love hate.
okay.
A love hate. I thought I was the one supposed to be asking questions.
Oh,
Um, I would no.
sorry.
I do have a struggle with drawing. I still have a struggle with drawing, and there was a period of time that I felt inadequate as an artist because my drawing is really not that great, and I worked on it. Right now, I'm at the point where I'm good enough without the drawing, and I'm enough without the drawing,
Sure.
but I still would like to. I should go back to it, when there's more
Listen,
time.
it's
Um,
never, you're never at a point where you're like, I'm done. I'm done learning to draw. Now
oh,
I'm
for sure.
perfect. I'm
Yeah,
a perfect
right.
draftsman. Like it's not, yeah. Um, I wish, like, I always think about going to do some drawing classes, but yeah, life happens, and there's just the time isn't always there.
Right.
But that's
Yeah, yeah,
definitely
yeah. No,
a dream.
there's always more. How, shifting gears a little bit, but how have you seen your work being appreciated, consumed? What impact, if at all, are we having as artists on our community?
I mean, there's nothing like someone buying like a Rebbe painting or print and telling you how like, oh, like the Rebbe's face is so alive to me, like I love it, I just can't, um I mean, just any feedback from a client who sees something and just tells you how much they love looking at it on their wall is, it's special because like you don't, we as artists we have very different like conflicting feelings about our work, right?
Right, right.
Like I know myself in the process of creating a painting, like usually it starts out like you're the idea is a killer idea, fantastic. The sketch is amazing. And then you're like in the meat of it and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is just terrible. And then it just all the way down. And then towards the end, you're like trying to save it. You're like, oh, I don't know. And then like you're like, okay, I had enough, it's done. And then you put it away. And then 2 months later, you're like, I made that? How did I make that? I can't make how can I do that again? Like, so we get so in our heads about stuff, and then
Right, right,
someone
right,
comes along and looks at it and says, "Oh, that's amazing," and just they see it without all the garbage that we bring to the creation of it,
right.
um, and that feels great. I mean, yes, hearing feedback from people how much they enjoy things. I don't know if it's answering your question in terms of like what type of impact am I making in a Jewish sense? Was that what you were asking?
Yeah, no,
Um,
just we're
it's
talking
more just
about like,
like, yeah, it's knowing, it's hearing feedback from people that are connecting with work and there's just nothing like feeling hearing from a client that they are so happy about something. Like it's just, yeah, it's definitely a more exciting part of this life. Yeah. of
yeah,
this uh of this path.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, making the sale is always great, but seeing the work on someone's wall, seeing other people appreciate the work on someone's wall or the sculpture or whatever it is, yeah, as we said earlier, it's a conversation. So
Listen,
having others,
I once had, when I was in school, I had a piece go to a show somewhere, I don't remember. And then like the school chose it. It went maybe somewhere in Albany or something. And like I came to the show, I was all excited, and the piece was hanging like sideways. It wasn't even the correct orientation because it was an abstract piece. So, it just goes to show like even the things that we think people are going to appreciate, or this is going to be so great, everyone's going to love it, I can't wait for them to see it.
right?
People see what they want to see. We don't always know what's going to inspire someone or what's gonna make them, excited about something. So yeah, there's definitely like a letting go, sort of a process of letting go that we could all get better at. You know,
I was thinking, and again, a different conversation I had, but you know, Hendel, Vetter Hendel, did he have any idea, the impact that he would have through his art? And there were two of them, so it was Hendel and Zalman Kleiman. You know, the work, the bodies of work that they've created, the impact that their bodies of work have created are so much greater than the individual paintings themselves. Um, that
definitely.
like they paved the way for us. Like, I didn't think about it. It was a previous conversation, this idea of who came before us and how they paved the way for us to the point that we don't even realize that they paved the way for us. But really, they did. Like the impact that they had in their lifetimes, maybe not, but definitely, today. And then, Michal Mochnik and from Kiryat Arba. Help me, I'm blanking.
What are you talking about?
This is horrible.
No, I know I'm
Um,
terrible at artist name recall. It's like one of my
you know
biggest
the
weaknesses.
you know the Rebbe.
But
I'll
yeah,
find his name. But, the Rebbe encouraged him and so on. That we have the luxury of continuing what they started. That we're not revolutionaries necessarily.
oh,
We're part of a tradition. We're a continuation in a tradition, and there is a tradition ahead of us, and that's just within the tiny microcosm of Chassidic art, and then you have Jewish art, and whatever Jewish art is. A question of impact. I don't know the impact. We're sitting here, we're talking. I don't know. And I don't get that. That feedback loop isn't always there. But I know that I'm putting something out there. I'm putting something out there into the ether, and it on its own is doing its thing. And that alone is very comforting.
well, that's fair. Listen, you also do a lot of um like you do a lot of public art. Public art's also a very different, like people are by definition going to be impacted by your work and you won't know the feedback.
Right.
There's going
Right.
to definitely be a big um like lack of, versus like making something for somebody, for a client, like exactly how they feel about it. But when you're
Right.
putting works on walls in large public spaces, like yeah, you don't know
Right.
what people are
Right.
seeing.
Right. Or also
Um
how to quantify it. I mean, like the classic is the portraits, the murals in the shuk. The shuk used to be, at nighttime they shut down and everything, shutters, and it's just an empty alleyway. And a few artists came along, when painted 1 and 2 and 5 and 10, at some point there was a tipping point, and now the shuk is as vibrant, has this vibrant nightlife. But it all began, because a few artists went and painted a few murals, and they'll never get.
is that what got
Yeah, yeah,
the vibe
yeah.
of
That's
the
the
ship
thing.
going?
Yeah, 100%.
Interesting.
The Shuk had, you know, the Shuk was just empty. It was an empty street with shuttered, with just gates and nothing, literally nothing going on. And then, and I don't think the artists saw this vision and like, oh, this is what they're gonna do. But, they painted one and they painted another. You look at Wynwood, you look at the High Line on the west side of New York, and the High Line, it's not even a piece of art. It is, but that became a magnet. These billions of dollars of buildings and industry and everything going on the west side of Manhattan that are completely tied, connected to the High Line. Um,
Sure.
and the same thing with Wynwood and that that art space. Just thinking about impact, what impact, how impact, and where we fit into all this.
Um, the short answer is I don't know. It's not for us. It's for the generation down the road when they want to write about us and they can write about our impact. I don't know.
Right,
I don't know if you need to like in the moment be thinking about direct impact. I mean, you can be. I definitely don't think along those lines of like how will I make the viewer feel.
right,
It's more like just what am I feeling? What do I want to say?
right,
What looks good to my eye right now?
right,
That looks good, great. That looks terrible, not great. Like that type.
right, right, right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, maybe
Anyway.
maybe it is that like I've done projects where I felt that they were absolute failures, and they were absolute failures because there was no response. Like I did
Right.
something using augmented reality that was totally cutting edge, and like the best I got was, oh, that's cute. you know,
It could have just been a lack of ability to understand what you were doing. Like
yeah,
it
yeah, it
just
could
didn't,
be,
yeah, ahead of your time.
right. Uh, so like that alone, like so I think about it, and yes, doing work, public work, right now I'm all about these public art maneras and being aware that making work in the public for the public in the public, so that dialogue is that much more prevalent in my mind.
I hear that. I wanted to, it's kind of connected to what you're saying, but something Rabbi Paltiel had mentioned about how artists have to be sort of like revolutionaries and um, sort of like system fighters, or I, I don't know if I agreed completely with it. I thought like, through every transition of an art period, there was a long time of sort of status quo, people doing what the times warranted. So I don't know like if you always need to make something or think about something that's like, how is this gonna go contrary to establishment, or like, sometimes it's like you're just creating from a place of like of right now, and this is how I feel, or
Right,
and
right.
and right now is cohesive, and just the normal. Um, but just in terms of you thinking like, how will people take it? How will people perceive? Um, yeah, I guess you're caught between weighing like, do I want people to perceive this in a conflicting way, and like I want to make people uncomfortable, or I want people to see something and say, oh, I know this. This is familiar to me. Like,
Right.
um, you know,
I
this
suppose in a
is
way also, I'm asking, what's our function in society, and within Hasidic society, Jewish society, and society at large.
I don't know. Our function is, I mean, to just, if you're Jewish, you're religious, you're from, that's your function, I think. That's something that I definitely agreed with Rabbi Paul Thiel about, like, you're Jewish and religious first and foremost, and then your art is something that should come from that. Because
Right,
if it's the
right,
opposite, then I don't know, it doesn't feel as, you want to anchor from the more solid uh you know weight, like from the point
right.
of more stability, which I think is a religion versus something more out there. I don't know, just more like conceptual ideas. But yeah, so I don't know what our
Are
point is.
are there any things that any bodies of work or ideas that you've kind of suppressed because they were not in line with your Judaic values, your Hasidic values?
um I don't think so. I mean, I always had, when I was younger, and you read like My Name is Usher Lev, and like I always had this dream of doing like my own sort of biblical interpretations of things, like, I mean, that's like very old school, like Rembrandt and all the more um I don't know, 15th, 16th century Dutch people used to do that. And it's fun because, like, you take something that people are so familiar with, and then you just like flip it. Or I never I never got in, I never like had enough I don't know, energy or just like time to really do that kind of those kind of projects. I felt like they would just be huge. There are a few
Right,
things like sometimes like you think about doing, and then you just the vastness of the project is just too big. You're like, I don't have time for that.
right,
Um,
right.
but yeah, that's one of them. I don't know if I've suppressed anything. I kind of just have ideas and I just go for it. Yeah,
No, it's beautiful.
slowly.
That's
Slowly. I do them slowly. Everything I do is slowly. I don't just
good.
the only thing I did that was just like ripping off the Band-Aid was just deciding to go to school, like, which I knew was a huge effort. But it's I don't know. There's nothing.
Look, looks like it's been a good choice.
Well, I hope so. I mean, every year seems to prove that way to me, thankfully.
Right,
Um,
right,
I always say, as long as the trajectory is going steadily up, even if you take a couple dips here and there, but as long as like the overall picture seems to be rising, like, you feel
right,
you feel you're
right,
on the right path. But and again, that narrative comes back. Like, you need to tell yourself a convincing story that this is what you're meant to do. I
right,
don't
right.
know if we always feel that purpose sort of ringing inside our heads. It's not always going to be there. Um, Especially when it's conflicted with reality. So you
Right.
have to you have to just sell it well,
To
um,
yourself.
to yourself. I
Right.
think if you sell it to yourself, like, other people sort of just fall in line with that. Like, I don't think you have to work too hard at convincing others, I think.
Right.
But I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's I love also that you are, doing different things. You got your paintings, you got your sculptures, your sculptures being made in different forms. You've you got a lot going on, and therefore you
Yes,
can
yeah. And
bounce.
my
You
latest,
can bounce between them. Um,
I love bouncing. We know, I mean, I know you can appreciate bouncing between things. I rarely get stuck on like a like the same type of work for too long. I mean, my sculpture work is very dusty and dirty, and I don't mind, for a short period, um, kind of manual labor for a while, but then like I like sitting back in a clean environment and painting. Although for some people painting is not so clean, but for me
relatively clean.
it's relatively clean. But yeah, you were mentioning that I'm all over doing lots of different things. I'm also recently doing a collaboration with a jewelry brand here in Melbourne.
Ah,
And we are taking some of my letters, my sculpture letters, and creating some beautiful
ooh,
jewelry. So that's coming soon.
okay. I look forward to
Yeah,
seeing that. That sounds exciting.
it's very exciting. It's a
Yeah,
cool space
yeah.
to be in, jewelry. But um, yeah,
All right, Hatzlacha.
thank you.
Well, Handel, this has been fun. I'm sure there's a lot more to say, but
It sure
I have
has.
one scripted question that I have in closing the podcast is, what's your advice? What is your advice for young creatives, for them to find their orange socks, for them to find their own creativity?
Um, I mean, I think what I've been saying about that narrative and story, to really drill that into your head, and which just paves the path for reality. One like specific tool would be just creating a practice. Part of creating a story it does need to be followed by action. I mean, unless you're an incredibly powerful dreamer. And there's nothing like daily practice of working. Like it doesn't need to be necessarily drawing every single day. Like, sometimes you can, as long as you're thinking about like the work, thinking about the art. And obviously it can't only be thinking. It needs to be,
Right,
you
right.
know, joined with actual creation. But just creating that practice, take lessons when you can in whatever it is, whether it's drawing or computers, graphic design, could be a jewelry making class, whatever your creative pursuit. But there just needs to be an early practice, and with practice comes
Progress.
just progress and betterment and development, and like it
Right.
just those small wins, take them and use it to drive you forward. And it doesn't mean it'll work. It doesn't mean anything, but it's if you have a fighting chance, you need, it'll come from that practice. But yeah, that's those are my thoughts.
All right. Beautiful. Hendel, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And look forward to seeing the jewelry line and a whole lot more. And one of your
Absolutely. Stay
sculptures, I
tuned.
want to see one of your sculptures in person. Do you have any of them in the New York area?
I have nothing, no metal in New York. I have something in America, but it's not near New York.
Okay. One
We'll have
day.
to see
Maybe
one
maybe there's
day.
another reason. Maybe there's another reason why I have to come visit Australia.
Yes, you definitely have to come visit it. There are lots of them here, that's for sure.
Okay. Okay.
But come for a visit. Come see all your
Cover
work hanging in Dominion, and
and elsewhere. Okay. Beautiful. All right. Thank you very much.
היום נעשה משהו בלתי נשכח